flew around in circles and I didn't find it.
As one does. Good morning, everybody. Sorry, a little bit late. We have a nice little rainstorm flying.
Big weekend plans because we have a friend getting married that he's been a really close friend of ours for years.
Yeah,
and we're so excited for him. And he's through weird happenstances, if you age long enough and you stay in a small enough industry, he ended up meeting and dating and is now getting married to somebody that my wife and I knew from college. Also, we knew him from college. He didn't know her. We knew her from college.
Oh,
and
congrats.
They met a couple years ago and we're like, oh my gosh, I never thought about those. Like, that's so great. And they've been doing, like, they did such a compliment to each other's lives. And this morning I wake up and Claire's not laying next to me. And I roll over to kind of see where she is. And I hear like,
oh no. And
then I come in here and I'm like, well, maybe I'll go without her. And then I'm like, oh no. So we'll see.
That sucks. And sorry we're late, guys. Just to catch everybody up to speed from my perspective, I texted Chris this morning. I was like, hey, because I got an alert on my phone because I didn't know there's a storm coming in. And I was like, oh, and then it starts raining. And I don't personally like having Julie and all the kids on the road like in rain. So I was like, sure, you know what, I'm gonna take Maddie to school. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna be a little bit late, and that's just the way we roll. And today's show, we're gonna be talking about Dragonflight. I know Chris is excited, and ultimately I think there's obviously with any kind of release, any kind of buzz, 10.0, I mean, this is kind of a monumental thing. That's going to be what the this episode kind of focusing on. It's going to be short, sweet, with a easy and hard cutoff time. So in a way, it's going to act as its own video. But if you're listening in the audio, etc., I hope you guys are doing well. Chris, are we ready to actually kick this thing into gear? Because I'm going to rely on
you. Got to go, man. Yep.
Your insight here. So I got the recording.
Oh, I do.
Oh, you do.
I wish I had a headband. I wish I had a band for my hair.
Mm-hmm.
But then I do. It's on my wrist.
Non-fungible taco, awesome name, says, I miss the good old days when it was acceptable to go to a wedding for the sole purpose of coughing and sneezing directly into the bride and groom's mouths. Congratulations.
You know, I've never met either of these people's grandmothers. You guys are awful. Thank you. That was one of the best things so far to come out of NFTs.
There we go. All right, let's roll with it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crystal Core Radio Podcast. Brian and Chris here today, talking with a focused idea about WoW Dragonflight. It is now in its pre-patch stage. The launch for the latest update expansion to World of Warcraft is only just a few weeks away. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's a buzz in the air. It's that time of year again. Every 2 years, this comes around. It's kind of like an off-year, on-year Santa Claus, if you will. And so, Chris, you've been excited about this pre-patch event. You've been excited about what Dragonflight is bringing. The floor is yours. Like, what about Dragonflight feels like a really good time to check out World of Warcraft again?
I mean, pre-patch is a most wonderful time of year. It's a great time to come back. So pre-patch is something that I wish 14 would do their own version of. It does a handful of really neat things. It, first of all, allows them to update your client. And so it pushes a ton of data out. You have these massive patches, massive maintenances. The server had to delay its time coming back up once, and then we got to that time and they had to delay it a second time. Obviously, we hope that's not the case, but if that's going to be the case, now's the time to do it, not on launch of, say, something like Endwalker, realize you can't get everybody in the game. So it's a great way to kind of offload like the data portion, get people's clients updated, troubleshoot a lot of things. And so it broke some people's UIs. This is a great way to do that. They go ahead and they roll out the class changes. So all the things that come out on the Final Fantasy XIV Media Tour, it's about the same time as the Final Fantasy XIV Media Tour. It's about a month out. And instead of revealing all the tooltips and us all speculating whether or not a damage squish is a problem or anything, they just let it go. Now, that did do some things, like it broke Mage Tower. Mage Tower is kind of known for its rewards and its challenge. And so they went ahead and just disabled Mage Tower during this period of time and plan on bringing it back next expansion. So it'd be the equivalent of them doing this and saying, but unfortunately for the next 4 weeks, there will be no Ultimate, because we just don't want to hear about whether or not it broke Ultimate. So we're just going to go ahead and just get out.
We're not going to worry about it. We're going to just let you play with the changes. Yes. Do they obviously make that announcement that
they do? And they say that will be rolling out. And so if you are within your last couple days of Ultimate, get it done. So it's not like the point. It's not like the 8S changes where it just kind of hit. So I felt like there was a little bit of notice. And then they go ahead and roll out any UI updates and things like that. Now, there is a second stage of pre-patch that will begin on the 15th, and there's a whole event, and it's like a seasonal event, rising event, taken all the way to the 9s. Imagine if the seasonal event introduced things like a brand new chi and all this just chaos. It's just chaos. And it's a one-time thing, and there's a unique mount from it. It's the only time to get it.
There was also a unique bag from it once, right? Or is that
still last time they gave us a unique bag. This time they're giving us a toy, I think. So there's always some little like item or something. So last time it gave us a really large, gave us a way to increase our inventory size by going out and killing rares. Time before that, we got to like burn down capital cities. If you could imagine, if you could imagine that this expansion we were to take on Still D, we had to burn down Ul'dah. Instead of making that a cutscene, that was a playable event leading into the expansion. And then the expansion started and Ul'dah was just burned down. But like we did that. So it's the end of 1.0. So 1.0, so like 14 can do this. They have done this. And it's something that WoW does every expansion at this point. So very, very cool to be part of these big events. And then the initial launch of WoW, which is it's a full single player RPG experience with online multiplayer battle elements, new dungeons, new raids, new PvP, new talents, new cosmetics. It's what every MMO promises to be. And whether or not you think any of those categories are strong or weak, they're really fun while they're new. And so it's a great time to be in WoW. But I wanted to talk to you because I got a chance to play some of the stuff with the new UI. And it's really good.
And this kind of ties into what Mick in chat is actually asking. Does controller work in WoW? And it actually did in Shadowlands. Like there's been this ever migration that's been happening, I guess, every 2 years. And that's one of the things that has generally piqued my curiosity, because I was able to, with Shadowlands, they actually added in an API that essentially removed an extra app. You have still like add-ons that can update the controller UI. And so that was actually very helpful. But what you had to have is an extra app running behind the scenes to kind of complete that mapping. In Shadowlands, they added it so that you didn't actually need that app running, because they opened up the API for that. And then here in Dragonflight, they've added in some of the things that I actually was like, man, they don't have a target nearest object. Now in Final Fantasy 14, for example, when people would say like, how do I target this guy? There's all these people around him. And I was like, I'm on a controller. Like I press this button, the A button, and it automatically just finds the correct target for you. And apparently that's being added in. The buttons for controllers for both PlayStation and Xbox are getting added in. And this is something that is an interesting evolution, because if they continue down this path, the question is that would we see the potential for 11.0 on consoles? Like, would we see that as an option? Right.
If the Microsoft transaction goes all the way through.
Right. Because we see ESO.
It's been moving along.
We're seeing a migration of MMOs onto consoles, because I think, especially when you start to think about volume, like you have Final Fantasy, you have ESO. I can't think of, you could kind of classify certain games maybe into that space. Somebody might say Phantasy Star. I would classify that as an MO, multiplayer online RPG, not a full-blown MMO, but maybe a couple are escaping my perspective. But this actually, like watching Force Gaming, he put out a video talking about this very thing. Could WoW come to consoles? And he says that in Dragonflight League, some of the targeting features are actually finally stepping themselves up. Even if you don't want to use them on a controller, just the idea.
Even if you don't want to use them on a controller. So my question to
Yeah.
you was, in Shadowlands, they added the ability to kind of use console commands to make native controller support. And
Right.
I was excited about it because there was already third-party programs that allowed for controller support, but they were working with limited tools. And so I was excited that maybe this primitive system acts as a better backbone for add-ons, but that's still add-ons. And you really prefer, hey, I have very little time to game. I don't need some third-party thing needs to be updated and all that. I just need it to work out of the box. So Steam is pretty close for you, but you want native controller support.
Well, it's interesting because even Force was like, I was using Brian's how to set up the controller with these add-ons guide because I was like, it is convoluted. It does take a little bit of extra, to get it to function, and it still didn't. And it's and this is a privileged and I recognize that when you have 14 as the Cadillac and that's what you've grown up on, and then they're like, hey, you wanna bubble gum and glue some of this stuff together, and you're like, it's just not there. Like I've got the version.
Some encounter where they generate some extra button on the screen that your thing didn't account for, because you know that the devs were aware of controllers in every decision they made. So it's just easier. You just boot up the game and you just play, and it just works. It's no fuss, as the comment said. It's exactly what that is. And so I understand that if you want controller support, you want native. I get that. And I get that there are people who don't care if it's native, and they have found a way to be ahead of you where they get to play controller now. Now, when we did Shadowlands, they added this native, and you're like, all right, I'd be willing to give it a try for native. And so what my wonder is what is it that you needed from the controller support as it sat? Because ultimately you didn't enjoy playing enough where you would play without me. And that meant that the moment I was not available, you didn't go. And in an MMORPG, if you don't play reasonably regularly, you never really achieve anything early on. Later, they can get to a more maintenance state. But when you first start a game, you got to at least get to cap. Or you just feel like it drags on forever.
Yeah. So I do know for a fact that one of the biggest frustrations that I had, they have added, and that was essentially target nearest, whatever, and so there was it was actually a very complex set of inputs that I had to do to try and target that loot bag or target this NPC. And it's like, there should just be a button. In Final Fantasy, it's the A button. A lot of this also stemmed from Guild Wars. Like, one of the things Guild Wars 2 did is it actually completely remapped how I interact with things, to the point where even in Final Fantasy, on the very, very, very restricted and limited time on keyboard, I changed that to the F key. And in New World, I made that the F key. It's my interact with whatever the hell I'm looking at button, right? And the fact that they've brought that in, actually, I was like, oh my gosh, I was doing like a 3-button press to try and target the whatever, right? And so it was like,
yes.
And that's there. And I was like,
the Guild Wars action targeting system. The fact that you view that system as something that is designed to make it easier to play with a controller, and if it happens to benefit keyboard players, great. Once again, reminds me, why the hell does Guild Wars not have native controller support? It just feels like everything you ask for from WoW to get it from where it is to where Final Fantasy supports controllers, every example you name, Guild Wars already has that bridge built. So I just have no idea why they haven't done the last step. They're like Chris, doing everything like filming a video, recording a video, uploading a video, and then just
uploading it. And then
I have a video that was uploaded back like October, I don't know, 14th or something. And it's
I literally went and looked at your dashboard. I was like, Chris, like, can you just do? Is this? It's a great. And you're like, and you're saying like, I love this video.
I'm sorry.
That's why Chris and the other, and Chris in chat, Chris the mod. Hashtag blame Chris. He's been helping also get some of those videos up on Gaming Content, which is that's why you're seeing them now, guys.
Those are actually going live. So everybody's like, wow, I'm glad Chris is posting again. Yeah, that's the other Chris. He's just pushing it. So okay, so the targeting was one thing. What was like another frustration you had with WoW, with any non-controller supported game that 14 kind of solves? And as you leave 14, you would be looking for from other games, because 14 is bar none the best fit for you in that UI way.
It's understanding that this is an input method. And WoW, to WoW's credit, like, controller support wasn't a real thing, but till recently. And that's where it's like, I'm so happy with 14 that Yoshi P is like, they didn't lock it down. He didn't go and like trademark it and copyright it. Like, no, he's like, this is what we want, and we want people to use this, because just like how World of Warcraft defined a language for the MMO player, like it would be amazing to sit here and say Final Fantasy then defined a great way of taking that same language and mapping it to controller. So one of the things that like is that it's the interactivity. It's that you can on a controller do absolutely everything. People might find that it might be difficult to target in 14, but then you go look at like the vast amount of features in terms of filters, the ability to change filters, to adjust your camera. All of that is just brought into the core understanding of how you interact with that. And that's one of the things, like for me, like to be able to easily adjust the camera. It's been a while since I've touched WoW. Like you said, like once you got all the way to cap, and then all of a sudden I just found myself kind of slogging through something that I don't have a history with. And I was like, okay, this is not fun for me. I'm just not enjoying it.
Expansion, so there weren't a bunch of other people around.
Right. It was just
so it didn't feel like, dude, I just had this crazy experience today. Let me tell you about it. It's like, no, it's just you alone in the world. And if you know a game, that's relaxing sometimes.
Right.
If you know a game, you're like, wow, I got my own private space. I'm just doing my own thing. But like, I personally really enjoy being around other people. If I didn't, then I would play single player RPGs where I could guarantee they wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I'm not worried about somebody running up.
My brother really prefers to have this really immersive, deep, personal RPG experience. And so he's slowly shifted. Like he plays the crap out of like, he's played Cyberpunk like multiple times through. He just, he loves, he's played Elder Scrolls a bunch of times. He's played like, that's what he does. One of the things that I think, as you described that, I remember you struggling with was you would say, hey, okay, I've got this controller thing working this way, but it's like wherever it is on the screen. How do I fix that? And so I was helping you kind of download add-ons, which is already taking you outside of your comfort zone with like, I just want it to work. Can it just work? But stay with me. Let's get you some add-ons. Let me get you some basic add-ons. And we're just going to let you move things around where you can move the bars, reshape the bars. You can have them appear or not appear in combat. And that was all done through add-ons. People use different forms of ways of modifying that, different things to like modify where your unit frames are, where do my debuffs spawn and all that. That is all native now. And you can have it snap to a grid and you can size that grid. You can literally resize the grid.
Wow. That actually sounds great. Like that sounds like that. The targeting already was like, I'm not committing to it publicly yet because like I just literally retired from 14 and I'm not sitting here looking to like
I was hoping to play with it for the stream this weekend if we get to that point.
That'd be kind of fun. That might be something worthwhile.
Not committing to playing Dragonflight. You don't have to buy anything. You can just come.
Yeah, exactly.
I started a brand new character, had a blast.
Yeah, that might be something kind of worthwhile because like I was also playing like my Warlock and I was like, oh man, I really miss my Druid. And it's like, let me just sit here and find the class that's right for me that I'm enjoying. And that'd be kind of just fun to see exactly like the difference now that patch and that technology has been pushed in, because it's going to make for at least a decent kind of comparison. Like what is the delta to get to that Cadillac that 14 is? So that would give me the ability to speak on where WoW was, where it is, and what they're still missing in terms of like just that preference. Because I also see Agent in chat saying would love native controller support for Guild Wars, WoW, and New World. And the only game on that list that I know that is not actively moving towards controller support is Guild Wars. In fact, the game director of New World's like, it's coming. They're like, we're working on the loadout system. And then right after that, that's basically what the team that is working on loadouts is going to be assigned to next, native controller support. It just makes sense. And I'm like,
it's crazy.
Thank you. It's going to be insane. And I think
that's saying drop keyboard for controller. I'd be really angry as a keyboard player. I play keyboard and mouse on PS3 and he plays controller on PC. So like we're just saying more control schemes for more people. There are people that can only play with controller. There are people that just prefer controller. Brian's a programmer by trade. I think that a lot of people have been introduced to Brian over the last week or so, and not for the most flattering of moments. And a lot of them have asked, like how's he making a living at YouTube with 5 kids? How's he make a living at comedy? That seems hard. Well, the answer is he's not.
Yeah, exactly.
He is a programmer by trade. And so, but like telling a story of Superman, it's not exciting to talk about his journalism stuff. Brian doesn't talk about his coding much. You're Superman in this metaphor, so congratulations.
I was like, I made 13 branches yesterday, and I'm working on getting them all to reconcile with one another. It's pretty fun. And then I got a compilation error. Whoa, so riveting.
He prefers to kind of have that separation from his keyboard and mouse when he games, and that's his own personal taste. And so the question is like, that was, I think that was the biggest thing with WoW, that and the knowledge base. But I was happy to teach you the knowledge base, but I can't just hold your hand all the way through. I needed you to have enough of a good time that like a tutor, I could assign you homework and say, hey, next week I want to do this with you. Could you find 2 hours between now and next Friday?
Yeah.
To get this thing done? Because like I don't want to have to play through the entire game with you. And so like could you do this? And you're like, but you didn't find that fun. And so it was literally homework. And that's why you fell off. But if you were like, oh yeah, I'd love to go do those 2 hours of things, and then I'll meet you there next Friday. There was no way to do that because the UI and the controller support just wasn't where Final Fantasies was. And so then you were having to learn the game, and you had questions about the lore, and the game wasn't answering the questions about the lore. And you were doing all this through a cumbersome interface because it didn't cater to the way you play games.
Yeah. And that's the same thing where, like, to kind of jump in on where New World is also lacking, is that I have managed to make a stopgap, in that regards, because Steam has this as a native support. So it does allow for that, but there's still times when playing it. I was talking with somebody even on Discord yesterday. They're like, hey, you ever run into this weird thing where all of a sudden this doesn't work? It's like, yeah, that's kind of a lacking of some error in the Steam layer that failed, and sometimes it just takes a minute and then it fixes itself. But every little bit of that is frustrating, especially because there is the example of it working, right? Like, it's like, okay, this is like, if it wasn't working, if nobody had that, the same kind of concept that I talk about with Destiny 2 is that once Destiny 2 had crossplay, cross save, any looter shooter MMO light that tries to step into that space that does not do the bit, like that would be considered a bare minimum now, does not do that, you're going to go maybe check it out, but you're not going to stay a long time because you're like, you know what, I've had pizza, why am I eating dog food? It's like, you're like, why am I sitting over here eating dog food when this is a clear, better and more enjoyable, slice of the pie.
And now that some people have left some frustrated comments down below, I want to circle back on a point that you made, that Guild Wars is the only one of those games not offering controller support. Guild Wars just released on Steam.
Yeah, and then
however,
crossplay.
It is not cross save. It is cross play. It's not cross save. And what that means is Brian, who has already made purchases on his account and has already leveled multiple characters on his account, would have to leave all of that behind in an MMO.
Yeah. And I was more than willing to purchase Guild Wars 2 on Steam again and purchase all of that on the Steam version again if my character was still my character. It's the same frustration that I have with ESO when people are like, hey, and we like getting invited, like, come check out the newest ESO expansion on PC. Like, I have a character sitting over here on Xbox. Even if it's not cross play, like, I'm glad that at least Guild Wars is cross play, but it's like, even if it's like, okay, we understand we want to separate console and PC experiences because of reasons. Let my character be my character, because I'm not going to sit here and progress.
Cross save with Xbox, and
Diablo 3 did not. Diablo 4 will.
And it'll be cross save, not cross play.
I think it's all of it. I think it's all of it for Diablo 4.
One of them did it that way, where they said playing together is unfair because playing with a keyboard and mouse and all of the specs of a PC, we just believe is able to do things that the console gens we've chosen to support will not. And so in a game, like, in my opinion, in first-person shooters, I find crossplay distinctly unfair. Keyboard and mouse players beat controller players on average consistently. There are individual controller players that can beat individual keyboard and mouse players, but the world's best keyboard and mouse players will crush the world's best controller players. And so I think separating the two, especially when you talk about hardware specs, separating the PS5 from the top PCs in the world, because it's not minimum spec PCs. These are people with $10,000 rigs. So when you're doing that and you're comparing a $10,000 rig to a $599 off the shelf box, yeah, of course they win. And so I think
I have a like ultra wide, it's 240 frames.
I don't disagree with.
Yeah.
But then if I take the time to go and, go on a quest for the Holy Grail and accidentally finally find a PS5, then I should be able to move my PC character over there and play with my friends that have also completed the mythical obtain a PS5 quest. And then whenever I'm done, I should be able to take that progress back to PC with me. And so like cross save just feels like as a minimum. And WoW handles that. Literally, you uninstall WoW. One of the things WoW does that I wish 14 was better at is, like, if you and I went out to a bar and we drank a little too much and you were like, I'm gonna play WoW. I'm gonna play WoW. You could come home, swipe your credit card as it already installed. It installed before you could find your password to Battle.net. So you installed the launcher, you're ready to go. Then you could go swipe your credit card and you are instantly given access to the game. Just swiping, and you just have to purchase the current expansion. A subscription gets you everything else. So literally you pay for 1 month subscription. You could buy a time card at the grocery store on the way home, swipe that card, and then you are in, no questions asked. And all of your UI, all of your settings, all of your buttons, all of your achievements, all of your characters are waiting. It is unbelievable. It takes cross save to just a ridiculous level. Everything is saved. It's
Thank
amazing.
goodness, like 14 eventually added that in. And that's one of the things I've always tried to remind people of. If you guys haven't done this in a while, go click the button next to your character and make sure you upload all your settings. It says your gear sets, your UI, all of that to the cloud in case your computer or whatever decides to take a break. It's just like, hey, that way you're not like ever finding yourself like having to start over from scratch. It's one of the things that I dreamed that they would actually implement at FanFest, because one of the things that takes the most time and downtime is that when you sit down at FanFest to play the experience, you're all of a sudden greeted with a UI and an input and whatever that is not native to you. And then there's like, okay, wait, what did I? So I always say that the solution has been, before you head to FanFest, take a screenshot of your UI and your skills for the job that you want to try. So that way you're not sitting here trying to make it all up out of memory. And so, but one of the things, be sure to be backing up your stuff, at least on a monthly regular, because I'm sure you change your glamour. I'm sure you change these like systems at least a little bit every now and then. So that way you're not sitting here.
Less add-ons in WoW. So like it's getting,
good.
I need less add-ons in WoW. So it's going to make that even better. So that game experience he's describing is something that all MMOs should offer. So the last thing is, if you got caught up, if you got all the way to the top, you would never make WoW your main game. It's just not going to happen. When I look at the things you want from an MMO, WoW is never going to be those things. It will always be what a neat comparison, what a neat break from the game that's a better fit. And that's fine. MMOs can be that. There are MMOs out there that are just good second MMOs for some people. They're never going to be their primary. It's nothing personal. WoW's beginning to maybe we'll see how it plays out over the expansion, but it looks like they're beginning to make things like some of the grinds account wide, so that if you decided to level up that warlock after getting your druid, some of that stuff would actually carry. And they're letting Alliance and Horde players play together in more and more and more types of content. And they're letting
11.0 is going to be wild. Like I think what a lot of this is building up to is that you kind of think of this next evolution or chapters that here's another staging environment where and then 11.0 ends up being like boom, 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 etc. Which, like, at the end of the day, like, one of the things that I've stated about New World, I've stated about all these other games, is like, you have a big budget, coming from this company. You have a big budget come from Amazon. It's like, I wouldn't count them out until they say they're done. Like, unless Blizzard says, that's it, guys, we're done. Amazon says that, all right, we hear you, we're done. And like, until you like do that, like, they have the war chest enough to have that war of attrition until they actually get it to where, people are like, oh, wow, this is great. Now, on that note, it is time for me to go scrum it up. I know this was kind of a short, sweet thing. Thanks, guys, for being willing to kind of have that flex. Chris is over on Twitch right now. And next week, we're going to be doing the Return to Eternum. We've got all kinds of stuff that's going to be going on.
Big giveaways on the 30th. Don't forget those.
Oh, yeah. The 30th. Join us. I'm going to probably step into WoW, checking out all the controller stuff.
And 14.
And 14. I still got to finish the controller guide. So I'm sure we're going to get all kinds of fun stuff. Till then, guys. See you. So on that, I'm sure I'm going to have to probably have some kind of UI element, because I know we'll probably get a troll or two going like, I thought you said you quit the game. It's like, I said I was going to finish the controller guides. And that's it.
Put a link with the T equals or whatever. Put a link straight to that. So when they click it, it'll literally take them to that spot in the video.
Oh, with the timestamp?
Yeah, good. Just put the timestamp in it. Just literally if you put the link in the bottom of that video, just literally go make it like, did you click the link at all? You clicked it and it just immediately goes, and I'm gonna stick around and finish the controller guides like immediately.
Get that clip going.
Or guys, right at the beginning of all your controller guides.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna finish all right. Cool, guys. I'm going to hit the end broadcast. Thanks so much for joining us for this quick and easy live show. Chris is over on Twitch right now.